John Hook's Newsmaker Saturday starts now.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Saturday. Arizona has emerged as the last battleground in the fight over claims that the 2020 election was fraught with problems, irregularities, and perhaps fraud. These are the claims, but multiple audits so far since November have determined that the vote tally was accurate. But Republican state senators used their subpoena power to demand that election officials hand over all of Maricopa County's 2.1 million ballots, as well as its voting machines and voter registration information. This audit is being conducted at Veterans Memorial Coliseum on the State Fairgrounds in Phoenix. One of the strongest voices in opposition to all of this is Arizona Secretary of State Katie Hobbs, who joins us on Newsmaker Saturday. Great to see you, Secretary Hobbs. We appreciate it. Tell me your biggest objection to all of this.
Well, the bottom line is that folks who had concerns about the election had every opportunity afforded to them by law to have those concerns heard out in courts. There were 9 post-election lawsuits, and none of them had evidence of this fraud that you mentioned or that they're trying to discover right now. We also conducted all of the required audits after the election to show that everything was on the up and up. And those audits all were fine. And then Maricopa County had additional audits. So what this is doing really is just perpetuating the big lie, which is doing nothing to help voter concerns. It's actually making voter concerns worse. And the folks that are saying that this is what needs to happen to make those concerns go away they're actually wrong on that. What we need to do is move on from this election and help rebuild voters' trust.
Let me play your predecessor, who is now the liaison for the people who are doing this recount, Ken Bennett. This is tape 1, talking about kind of what might come out of this. Let's take a listen.
They're going to review the machines to see if there's any evidence that they were connected to the internet, there was any tampering with the software versions, anything that would normally be done to make sure that the machines were functioning correctly when the election occurred in the first place.
Is there anything materially different about this audit? They call it a forensic audit. Is this in some way a deeper dive than what was done by the county or by you guys?
Well, unfortunately, we're not ever going to know that because the machines were locked away in a room that didn't have any access. So these cameras that they're saying we have cameras everywhere, they weren't showing what they were doing with the equipment. And the day that our election equipment expert was allowed in the Coliseum, they packaged up that equipment and took it back to Maricopa County. And so we're not ever going to know what they did. But I can tell you, voting machines are not connected to the internet. You don't need an audit to figure that out. They're not connected to the internet. And we've done logic and accuracy testing that has determined that there was no software tampering in the machines. That's built into statute. We do that every election. And so I just, again, this is just trying to stoke those fears and concerns that we already know from 9 court cases are baseless allegations.
Now, the Senate has the authority under the state constitution to order this. So the state Senate did order it. I know you fought it, but at least on legal grounds, and the judge said, the Senate has standing to do this. I'm sure you don't like it, but they do have standing, right?
Well, yes, the judge said that the subpoena was a valid subpoena.
So if, let's suppose, something came out of this that was untoward, would it be just dismissed out of hand because there has not, in your view, been enough oversight over what they're doing down there, and there are questions about security of the machines and the ballots and all of this? Is that kind of the position?
Well, I think it's bigger than that in terms of the actual legitimacy of this so-called audit. We've had concerns from the beginning that the folks involved in this didn't know what they were doing. When the judge ruled in favor of the subpoena, it was clear that the Senate had no plan for how they were actually going to carry this out. They hadn't engaged a firm yet. And then when they did engage a firm, it's this Cyber Ninjas and their affiliates who are not auditors. They are not election experts. And we've now seen the procedures, and from the procedures, it seems very clear that they don't know what they're doing in terms of election-related audit, which is why it was important that we got our observers on the ground there to document these kinds of concerns. They are changing procedures as they go. That is causing confusion for some of the folks counting the ballots.
Does that get back to the use of blue and black pins on this, which are not supposed to be used? That was one of the sticking points early on.
What we've been able to observe, and our observer didn't get in there until a week after the blue ink situation, is that they were still a week into this changing procedures as they were going.
The judge in this, you mentioned him, Daniel Martin, he concluded last Wednesday that he was satisfied with the procedure that the cyber ninjas are using. He expressed some doubt over why this is necessary, but still he said, so far with what we've demonstrated, he's okay with what they're doing. You're not, for sure.
Well, I don't know that he is using the same criteria that we are in terms of evaluating the actual procedures. I think he was satisfied that the procedures were produced, which is what part of the court hearing was about. But in terms of these procedures' actual legitimacy as related to a valid post-election audit, what election experts would put into place, I don't know that he was making an evaluation on that. And certainly our folks have not seen that these procedures are very meaningful in terms of this kind of process.
We should point out that the election results were certified months ago, so nothing that happens here will change the outcome. The House, U.S. House and Senate certified the election. Arizona certified it. It's done. It's a fait accompli. Joe Biden is president. That won't change. Ken Bennett raised this issue. This is, again, your predecessor from a few years ago who held your very job. Let's play tape 2, and I want you to react to this.
We're going to be able to tell every Arizonan in a few weeks that they can have complete integrity and trust in their elections, or that we have some parts of the election that need to be improved.
What do you make of that? I mean, well, on the face of it, it sounds, okay, that's reasonable. If they find something, then let's fix it. But you think this is a fishing expedition?
The fact of the matter is that we already know that we can tell Arizonans with certainty that the election was free from fraud and the results that were certified are completely valid. It is elected officials and their followers who are continuing to spout the misinformation and conspiracy theories and lies about this last election because they refuse to believe that Donald Trump lost, that is stoking these concerns and really allowing them to continue. If all of these leaders stood up and said, no, our elections have integrity, we have these processes in place. In fact, many of the same legislators are the ones who passed the laws that we followed. And they're not doing that because this is allowing them to further their own political agenda. But it is certainly not doing anything to assuage actual real concerns about the election.
Do you suspect that fundraising may be part of this as well? It's been speculated that the Republicans are fundraising in a big way off of this idea. Is that part of this, do you believe?
Oh, absolutely. When I talk about furthering a political agenda, it's their ability to fundraise off of this, their ability to continue to undermine concerns and lack of confidence in or confidence in our not just elections but democratic institutions as a whole. And that's the kind of thing exactly that led to January 6th. And I thought that maybe we would see a lowering of the volume after that. And clearly it's not going to happen. And this is just going to continue. And it continues to be dangerous.
Let me throw one more out. This is Senate President Karen Fann, a Republican. She says, I'm quoting her, when you've got half of the people that do not trust the electoral system anymore, rightly or wrongly, if they have questions, who is responsible for answering these questions? She is trying to say that insight into this is maybe a good thing, no matter how it turns out. How do you respond?
Again, the concerns that exist because people like Karen Fann and other members of the legislature and other politicians are refusing to stand up for the integrity of our election. Again, these laws that were followed are laws that they voted into place. And it is not half the electorate by any means. And in fact, it is a small percentage of the Republican base that they are trying to appease with this exercise.
If they find anything that's hinky, it will be summarily dismissed as nonsense. Is that fair to say?
Well, I certainly don't want to go into this having pre-drawn conclusions, but I think I've expressed very clearly the concerns that we have about the legitimacy of this entire exercise, as well as specifics about procedures that are being implemented that undermine the credibility of what's happening.
It sounds like President Trump, it was statements at Mar-a-Lago last weekend that he is hanging his hat on this Arizona audit as kind of the first domino to fall. That's the best I can read it.
Well, and you've said it already, I've said it, nothing that's happening here is going to change the outcome of the 2020 election. The time for that is long past. But I believe, and I'm not alone in this, there are people watching around the country what's happening in Arizona. And if they're successful here, and when I say that, I mean they're able to continue to keep this big lie about the election alive, they're going to take this show on the road. They are writing the playbook here to take this to Georgia, to Michigan, anywhere else that is considered a swing state. Finally,
are there any election laws that you think should be tightened going into 2022? Are there any things that we did here that you think do open the possibility of fraud or falderall, whatever you want to say? Anything?
Well, we put together a list, a comprehensive bill based on our experience overseeing this last election that would enhance election security, number one, streamline election administration, and help improve voter access. And we put that forward. Unfortunately, it did not move anywhere. But I will say that none of the bills that are currently moving in terms of the election laws actually do anything to address any existing problems in our elections.
One more. Are you running for governor?
I have not publicly announced any plans for 2022.
You could do it here. This is a great opportunity.
Not ready for that yet.
Katie Hobbs, Secretary of State, your current job, we'll see what the future holds. We thank you again for your time. You've been
so
always very gracious with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good to see you. When we come back on Newsmaker Saturday, we're going to talk taxes. Who's paying them? Who isn't? And is everything that you've heard about taxes and who should pay what, is it wrong? We're back in a minute on Newsmaker Saturday. Back on Newsmaker Saturday, we are going to talk taxes. And don't turn the channel. This is interesting stuff. Who pays them? Who doesn't? And when politicians demand that people pay their quote-unquote fair share, what does that mean exactly? Some of the things that we're about to learn may surprise you. Will McBride is the Vice President of Federal Tax and Economic Policy at the Nonpartisan Tax Foundation in Washington, D.C. Will, thank you for being with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
We're going to show you a pyramid graphic that might shock some people. When you see this, the bottom biggest part of the pyramid is the top 1% that continually get vilified as not paying their fair share of taxes in this country. It turns out they pay the most taxes in this country.
That's correct. So this is the latest IRS data. It's on their website for all to take a look at. I mean, it's a lot of data, so you have to know how to read it. But there's no doubt this sort of thing has been the case for years and years in the U.S. We have a very progressive federal income tax, and such that the top 1% pay 40% of federal income taxes.
Will, how many people are in that 1% in the United States? What percentage are in the 1%? I mean, it's 1%, but how many people are we talking about? 4 million, 5 million?
Let's see that. So that's about 150 million tax filers. So we're talking about what does that mean?
Maybe 18. Let's see. Well,
yeah,
okay.
1.5 million, I think. 1.5 million.
Okay, so
in the top 1%.
The question is, are there enough of those people to tax to generate? I mean, we're spending now, right now, it's going to be $6 trillion this year that President Biden has proposed in his first 100 days in office. Can you get this by taxing the top 1%?
Well, we'd have to run the numbers on that to see if you have to basically confiscate all income, and then you would need to go after the wealth of the top 1%. And we actually don't have a good understanding of the wealth in this country held by say the top 1%. But so we have to crunch the numbers on that. But in any case, that sort of confiscation would, of course, have all sorts of downsides. And the thing is, people don't like that sort of policy. And they find ways around it. And so even if that sort of policy were implemented, not sure the money could actually be gathered that way.
The president has said that no one under his plan who makes under $400,000 a year would be taxed a penny more. That's a direct quote. Is that possible?
No, technically, I'm an economist, and I don't believe that is possible. I don't believe you'll find any economist who will say that's possible economically. You can't isolate a tax like an income tax, as President Biden is proposing, to this or that taxpayer. I mean, if the federal government were to raise your taxes, what happens? You lose money, and then those who you pay, or the services, the goods and services that you purchase, and the people that provide those are then harmed, and there's all these knock-on effects, and that's the economics of it.
Let me
so
play.
It's actually impossible to isolate those effects.
Yeah, in fact, what I'm reading is that you would end up with under the Biden plan by 2030, it would lead to 8% less after-tax income for the top 1%. So they'd get hit hard, and then it would be a 2% hit for everybody else as well. They'd have 2% less, and that's in any economic strata.
Yeah, that's right. As progressive as Biden's proposal is and designed to be, you can't deny the economics of it, that in the end, whether it takes a year or 2 years or more to affect the rest of the population, it will affect the rest of the population.
That's interesting. Let me play for you. This is Joe Biden. It's tape number 2. He talked this week about raising taxes on individuals and corporations to pay for his proposed spending. I want you to react to this after we listen to it.
Just have the super wealthy begin to pay their fair share. For example, you have, I think it's 35 or 30 corporations didn't pay a single solitary penny last year, and they're Fortune 500 companies. They made $400 billion. They paid no taxes. How can that make any sense?
Okay, Will McBride, a couple of things. Are there corporations that pay no tax? Is that true?
In a given year, it's certainly true. Any business, the thing about businesses, some years they lose money, and that's the risk of going into business. And when you lose money, legally, you don't owe tax. This is a tax on profits, not a tax on losses. So yes, every year, a large percentage of companies, big and small, don't pay tax legally. They're not supposed to pay tax because they've lost money. Now, President Biden is looking at one set of books. Okay, that's the books that are provided, the financial statements provided to shareholders from large companies, and saying that, wait a minute, there's profits here, but then the taxable income is different that year. It's a loss, and they don't pay tax. Well, those are two different sets of books. Taxable income is defined very differently than financial statement income or book income. And that's on purpose, and everyone knows that.
In 2017, the top 50% of all taxpayers paid 97% of all individual income taxes in this country, while the bottom 50% paid 3%. That is correct, that the bottom 50% are paying virtually nothing.
That is correct. Virtually nothing in federal income tax. There are other federal taxes that are much smaller. At the low end, the bottom half of the population, let's say, they primarily pay payroll tax, but not federal income tax.
Okay, we should say here that the top 10%, the cutoff to be in the top 10% is $158,000. Again, these are people doing very well, but they are not super rich. They are not super wealthy by any definition.
That's right. Not super wealthy, but they're paying very, very high taxes. And in terms of tax rates, the top top 10% pays a double-digit tax rate, federal income tax rate, around a 15% federal income tax rate. The top 1% of tax filers pay 25% federal income tax rate. That compares to the bottom half of the population that pays a 3.4% tax rate.
That may surprise a lot of people because, again, there's this, and I don't know how I guess it's a political talking point, but it's become kind of just an article of faith that the rich don't pay enough taxes. The data just doesn't support it.
Yeah, that's right. And it's changed over the years dramatically, really, such that the tax code has gotten more and more progressive almost every year for the last 30 years or so. And Biden's policies are designed to make the tax code yet more progressive.
Are there enough people to tax in that group to pay for the kinds of programs we're talking about right now?
Well, again, we'd have to run the numbers on that, but it doesn't appear that that's possible to me. What we've done is scored President Biden's American Families Plan and found that comes up short paying for the spending. The spending in that plan is 1.8 trillion over 10 years. We find that it would the tax increases that are focused on high income earners would generate only about 600 billion over 10 years.
Will, we're running out of time, so I want to ask you a couple of quick things. In all of the world, where does America rank in terms of tax confiscatory policy? Are we a high tax place now or no?
Well, we are very high tax in terms of income tax, in terms of income tax rates, and particularly in corporate. We're a little above average on the corporate tax rate relative to other developed countries. On federal income taxes, we have the most progressive income tax system in the developed world. We do a lot of redistribution through our federal income tax system, and other countries generally do not do that. And we essentially run a lot of social welfare programs through the federal tax code and redistribute that way, and that's not very common anywhere else.
I appreciate your time, Will. It's an education because, again, I think there's been a lot of misreporting in this area. Will McBride, Vice President of Federal Tax and Economic Policy at the Nonpartisan Tax Foundation in D.C. As we go to break, if you want to share this program with someone else, we've got it up now. Go to fox10phoenix.com/newsmaker, and you can watch it at your leisure or pass it on to somebody else. Will, thanks. Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Saturday. You can reach us at John Hook Fox 10, Twitter and Facebook. We'll see you next week on Newsmaker Saturday.